So welcome to the last section, last video in the compilation of putting this 250 Triumph back together. This is the photograph that where we left the last clip, and it shows the engine fitted into the frame. And obviously we've got a few things to do to get the thing ready. The first thing I do is, before you actually do any of the fitting of the Magneto or anything else, is to make sure that these sprockets are lined up. So you have the drive sprocket on the engine here, and you have the pickup sprocket on the gearbox, and that is obviously the drive sprocket to the rear wheel. It's important that they're lined up, and I use a steel straight edge to make sure they're lined up correctly. You can move the gearbox, or you can move the engine. I find it a little easier to move the engine because you've got a little bit more flexibility. The gearbox itself runs on this pin here, and it rotates like this to make sure you've got the right tension in the chain going to the back wheel, and that's the adjuster for tensioning the rear chain. It's important that when you're lining this up, that when you've got it aligned like this and you're happy that it's straight, that you go through the full range of movement on that screw to make sure that the sprocket doesn't move out of alignment as you start to tension it. So that was the left hand side of the engine. The right hand side of the engine, as you can see here, I've put the gears in there. I will take them out and I'll show you why in a moment, but I just wanted to make sure that they're all fitted. I've got all the push rods and everything sorted. I've put the exhaust valve lifter cable in here. I'll just put that in to make sure that it actually stays attached and it doesn't flop down. And this is the pivot for the hand gear change. And so that's the right hand side of the engine. The next part is to fit the Magneto and the alternator. The Magneto runs off a taper, and it does this so it allows you to change the timing of the Magneto, and so therefore you have a tapered section here. There's no key in it because you need to be able to rotate the gear on it, but it's important that the taper's in good condition and the thread's in good condition. You can see here the thread's in good condition and the taper isn't, and so the first thing that I've done here is to get the mating gear, and there's a taper on the inside of the gear here, and there's the taper on the outside of the shaft, and I've got this grinding paste, and basically I just rub the two together until I get a good matching taper between the two. There's no point in having a perfect taper on one and a different taper on the other, or a good taper on one and a dodgy shaft on the other side. It's important that both are in good condition because they do need to grip, so it's worthwhile putting the effort in to make sure that those two mating surfaces are smooth and aligned and are going to bind when you tighten this nut. Obviously, make sure you take all the grinding paste off before you put it all back together. But what I've done now is I've put the alternator, the alternator's the part at the top and the Magneto's at the bottom, and that fits in an assembly that sits on that plate. It is completely adjustable, so you need to make sure that it's properly aligned in this direction and in this direction as well. So you want to make sure it's straight and level in this direction. But you want to make sure that it's properly aligned to make sure that gear is driving correctly on that shaft. It's only a simple strap that holds it together. So there's a brass strap either side held together with a little set of nuts on there. And then this is the advanced retard cable that is going to go back up to the handlebar. I've put all the gears in here just to make sure it's all properly aligned, but I'm going to take that off to set the Magneto. But you can see how it's all set up. This can be adjusted afterwards, so I wouldn't worry too much about it, but you mustn't forget to get that aligned because it will cause you issues on your timing. It will cause whine in the gears if it's not quite set up right, and ultimately it will cause you wear on your Magneto in the end of the day if it's not properly aligned. So this is the left hand side. You can see here I've refitted in the drive shaft with the spring cush drive. I've got the chain on it and everything, so that's now all set, and it's a nice shiny chain, so it's going to work well. And what I've done is I know that I've wound the Magneto around until such time as the contact breaker is just about to open, and I've made a little mark, so I know that the angle of that contact breaker arm is just when the contacts are starting to open. And so I've made a mental note that is the position of that the contact arm needs to be in when we're just past top dead center. So therefore I can then align that Magneto position with the rest of the engine. This is the advanced retard line here, and what I've done is I've made sure that is at maximum advance, and so therefore I'm in a position where I can then adjust this afterwards because of the adjustment system will allow me to then move backwards from that position. But as I say, I use just a standard cigarette paper test, where you basically rotate you put a piece of paper in between the two contacts, and you rotate the magneto around until it's just open. You can pull the paper out, and that's when you know that the contacts are just coming apart, and that is the angle at which that happens. On the other side of the engine, you have these two. These are the camshafts, and these are basically sitting in just simple bushes in the housing, the engine housing, and they also sit in bushes in the outer